Hello, good afternoon everyone. This is Waylene C. Arpiada from Group 6 and this is my presentation in Arts Appreciation, which is my topic is all about aesthetic relativism in popular culture. So now, let's go on to the definition of aesthetic relativism. What is aesthetic relativism? Aesthetic relativism is a philosophical view that the judgment of beauty is relative to different individuals or culture and that there are no universal criteria of beauty. Aesthetic relativism is a view wherein art and beauty are subjective matter, not an objective type. Every artwork has its beauty no matter how taboo, dark, ridiculous, or small. It is something that a lot of people has trouble understanding because a human being is egocentric. We all have different tastes, but aesthetic relativism states that we have to be respectful and understanding that something might not be relevant or appealing to us is something appealing to someone else. And also, aesthetic relativism is a variety of philosophy known generally as relativism, which casts doubt on the possibility of direct epistemic access to the external world, and which therefore reject the positive claim that the statement made about the external world can be known to be objectively true. So now let's go on to the examples of aesthetic relativism. There are two examples of static relativism. In the first image shown Venus of Willendorf and the second image shown Woman with a Mirror. So first, I identify what is Venus of Willendorf. Venus of Willendorf, also called a human or woman of Willendorf or nude woman, a upper Paleolithic female figurine found in 1908 at Willendorf, Austria. That is perhaps the most familiar of some 40 small portable human figures, mostly female, that had been found intact or nearly so by the early 21st century. It has been suggested that she is the fertility figure, a good luck totem, a mother goddess symbol, or an Aphrodite made by men for the appreciation of men. So the second example is Woman with a Mirror. Woman with a Mirror demonstrate a harmony of color and composition typical of the young Titan, who exalted the beauty, even sensuality, of his subject. Women with the era wear loose hair only in the intimacy of the home, which confers to the painting an erotic character that it prevails over the other elements of the Vanitas theme, which call the battle of ointment and the play of the mirrors. In the visual art, the mirror has been interpreted as an instrument to show admiration or self-admiration, to show a hidden object or people, demonstrate from the different perspective, but it also has been used as a pictorial instrument for demonstrating the artist's skills in painting distorted objects or reflection of people, unseen in the foreground. In fact, the mirror is a crucial element in the art of painting because many famous self-portraits would not have existed if there are no mirrors. So, body modification among primitive people is something or sometimes considered as grotesque by Western society in contemporary perspective. For example, an historical terms in female figurine showed in Venus of Willendorf and the woman with the Rubens painting will be considered overweight today. but the slim models on the page of the modern fashion magazines will probably be viewed negatively by our ancestors. At the fourth slide, we have aesthetic relativism in philosophy. What is aesthetic relativism in philosophy? Might be regarded as a subset of an overall philosophical relativism, which denies any absolute standard of truth or morality, as well as the aesthetic judgment. Aesthetic relativism is a variety of philosophy known generally as relativism, which casts doubt on the external world, and which therefore rejects the positive claim that a statement made about the external world can be known objectively true. The most prominent philosophical opponent of aesthetic relativism was Immanuel Kant, who argued that the judgment of beauty, while subjective, is universal. So, who is Immanuel Kant? Immanuel Kant is a German philosopher who is widely considered to be central figure of modern philosophy. He argued that human concept and categories structure of our world and its laws, and that is the reason of source of morality. His thought continues to hold a major influence in contemporary thought, especially in the fields of metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, political philosophy, and aesthetics. But not everyone is enthusiastic about Kant's philosophy, especially in the fields of aesthetics and taste where cultural relativism has gained favor since the advent of postmodernism. Kant has been criticized for reasoning that aesthetic judgment have universal validity. So, in the next slide, we have the example of aesthetic relativism in philosophy, which is a frequently cited source of philosophical relativism in postmodern theory, is a fragment by Nietzsche entitled On Truth and Lie in an Extramoral Sense. On Truth and Lie in an Extramoral Sense is an initially unpublished work of Friedrich Nietzsche, written in 1873, 1 year after the birth of tragedy. It deals largely a epistemological question of truth and language, including the formation of concept. So, Friedrich Nietzsche, on Truth and Lie in an Extramoral Sense, examined the formation of concepts in their most basic form. He asserts that every word is a concept due to the inherent nature of words as means to describe or serve as a reminder of a unique and wholly individualized original experience to which it owes its birth. The application of words to divulge the significance of subject has to be unique. Words cannot or rather should not have double meaning or else they fail to define an intended subject. Nietzsche compares the origin of concept to leaves. He argues that the concept of leaf is formed through the arbitrary abstraction. Each leaf is unique. However, when we speak the leaf, it's meant to define a broad and general idea, a concept. Nietzsche maintains that by the principle there should not or should be a standard leaf from which all leaves are derived. Therefore, a leaf is itself a concept from which an exact definition cannot be given. In comparison, concepts are formed as a result of lack of actual knowledge of a particular subject, so words act as a substitute for an uncertain definition. Nietzsche states that we obtain the concept as we do the form by overlooking what is individual and actual. Thus he reasoned that elements such as this is always being unknown since there are no way to define the words in relation to what they were applied to. So for me, Friedrich Nietzsche essays attempt to analyze the misconception of truth that occurs in the common ideas of knowledge. He questions the values of words as a form of knowledge. Nietzsche argues that the knowledge that comes with words is limited because, rather than a true definition of words, is limited because provide an abstract idea. Nietzsche challenged the certainty of or what categorized as truth. The question that I took away from Friedrich Nietzsche essay is how much truth exists if what appears to be trivial in the words can be qualified as truth. Nietzsche understand of truth appears to go beyond what can be practically understood. So this work of Friedrich Nietzsche was assert rather, that the proper search for truth should originate in the artistic impulse, which strikes man in a unique and novel way, rather than the rational progression of science, which merely builds upon and seek rather further justify existing science. So now I identify who is Friedrich Nietzsche. Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche was a German philosopher, philologist, cultural critic, poet, and composer. He wrote several critical texts on religion, morality, culture, philosophy, and science, displaying a fondness for metaphor, irony, and aphorism. According to Paul Eglin, Nietzsche is arguing that concepts are human invention, created by the common arrangement to facilitate ease of communication. Human beings forget this fact after inventing them, and come to believe that they are true and do correspond to reality. Thus Nietzsche argues that truth is actually a mobile army of metaphors, metonyms, and anthropomorphism. In short, a sum of human relations which have been enhanced, transposed, and embellished poetically and rhetorically, and which, after long use, seem firm, canonical, and obligatory to the people. Truths are illusions about which one has forgotten that this is what are. Metaphors which are worn out and without sensuous power. For example, coins which have lost their pictures, and how matter is only as metal, no longer as coins. So now, the next type of aesthetic relativism is in the sexual choice. Aesthetic relativism is prevalent in the social sciences and in feminist thinking. The beauty in aesthetic relativism, it is seen as a social construct rather than something that serves a natural purpose. For example, There are some believe that societal tolerance of symptoms of aging, such as gray hair and wrinkled skin, is more common in males than in women. So, in sexual choice, on relationship between aesthetics, social attraction, and reproduction, Mr. Arthur Schopenhauer on the metaphysics of love and sexes, in his major work, The World as Well as Representation. For him, the criteria for sexual attraction are, in men from the perspective of woman, was status rather, strength and wealth. Who is Arthur Schopenhauer? Arthur Schopenhauer was a German philosopher like Immanuel Kant and Friedrich Nietzsche. He is best known for his 1818 work entitled The World as Will and Representation, which characterized the phenomenal world as the product of blind nominal will. Building on the transcendental idealism of Immanuel Kant, Schopenhauer developed an atheistic metaphysical and ethical system that rejected the contemporaneous ideas of German idealism. Arthur Schopenhauer has been dubbed the artist philosopher on account of the inspiration his aesthetics has provided the art or the artists of all stripes. He is also known as the philosopher of pessimism. He articulated a worldview that challenges is the value of existence. So this book is by far the most difficult and challenging book you'll be reading this quarter. But what is interesting is the reason why it is so challenging. It is not challenging because Schopenhauer is a bad writer. He is considered a superb rather writer with an ability to phrase things simply, clearly, and beautifully. So, Schopenhauer work is one of the most important philosophical work of the 19th century. The basic statement of the one stream of post-Kantian thought. It is without question Schopenhauer's greatest work. Convinced and published before the philosopher was 30 and expanded 25 years later. It is the summation of a lifetime of thought. At the next slide, according to the ethical relativism, morality is stated to be relative to one's culture standard. To put it another way, the moral norms of the society in which an activity is carried out decided whether or not it is proper or wrong. The same behavior may be ethically correct in the group or in one group, but morally incorrect in another. Whatever the link is between aesthetics and morals, it is probably certainly close because there are two kinds of values. Moral are values that determines whether a person's action are good or evil, and aesthetic is the sort of value that is closely related to sensory or artistic aspects. Art is influential because it has a capacity to shape our society, politics, and even the economy. When we view a powerful work of art, it touches us deep down, giving us the ability to make real life changes. It encourages a generation that is now concerned with technology to appreciate culture. Indeed, without art, our history, culture, and customs will be in much greater risk of being lost than they now are. So, as my topic is all about aesthetic relativism and popular culture, I identify now what is popular culture. Popular culture is the entirety of ideas, perspective, attitudes, image, and other phenomena that are within the mainstream of given culture, especially Western culture. Of the early to mid 20th century and the emerging global mainstream of the late 20th and early first century, or 21st century rather, heavily influenced by mass media. This collection of ideas permeates the everyday lives of the society. It is determined by the interaction between people and in their everyday life, such as activities, dress sense, greeting rituals, and type of food that people eat, that are all examples of popular culture. Popular culture is always defined implicitly or explicitly, in contrast to other conceptual categories such as folk culture, mass culture, dominant culture, work class culture, and etc. So there in the next slide, we have the example of popular culture, which is I example the foot binding in China. What is foot binding? Foot binding was done by Chinese women throughout the 20th century for thousands of years. It involves typing up the feet that are causing down to curl in a displacing manner for it to be as small as possible. This is done for Chinese women to find husbands since Chinese men find small feet attractive. The practice was painful and uncomfortable. Women were to walk awkwardly after completing the process. It was known that women from the upper classes would afford to have the process done, and women when or on lower classes would need their normal feet to perform their chores properly in the farm. Moreover, men outside China were to find a small feet unattractive, and only Chinese men were fascinated by the practice. So, this is the factor that made foot binding fade away. So, now let's go on to the foot binding process. It is start when a girl is her young years. The process involves bandages around the feet that were not supposed to be removed until her wedding night or occasional washing. Aside from the bandage, golden slippers were used to dance or jump on them as they got smaller to fasten the process. Feet were soaked in hot water, and toenails were clipped short before massaging the feet with oil. After that, they would fold the toenails except the big toes against the bottom sole, resulting a triangular shape. The bandage were sometimes removed to prevent infections of blood, pus, and unneeded flesh. Or cut it off as the cloth tightens and shoes become smaller over time. Women were forced to walk long distance to quick the procedure. And once the process had been completed, women cannot have normal or natural feat without experiencing the same pain and process all over again. And for the origin, foot binding was believed to have begun between the Tang and Song dynasties, and at the time, bond feet were called golden lotuses. Based on the story, foot binding originated from the palace dancer satisfying her royal master. One story is about an emperor being captivated by the woman with the small feet who danced on the top of lotus-shaped floor. According to a Smithsonian writer, Yao Niang, a 10th century dancer who arched her feet in the shape of new moon. She charmed Emperor Leo through dancing on golden lotuses with ribbons and precious stones. Who is Emperor Leo? Leo before 1961, known as Li Kongjia, also known as Li Huzu, was the third ruler of the southern Tang state during the Imperial China's Five Dynasties and Ten Kingdoms period. He reigned after or from 961 until 976. He captured by the invading Song dynasty's armies, which annexed his kingdom. He died by the poison of orders of Emperor Taizong of Song after 2 years as the exiled prisoner. He also charmed by the Yao Niang, the 10th century dancer, through dancing on golden lotuses with ribbons and precious stones. Based on the archaeologists found, wrapped small and misshapen feet placed inside lotus shoes. The woman was known to be Lady Yuang Xin, a wife of an imperial clansman who died in 1243. The undertaking of foot binding represents a woman's commitment to her Confucian values, where it involves the pain, discomfort, and physical constraint this woman should meet. Confucianism emphasized chastity, obedience, and diligence for women. It was religiously believed that a good wife should only aspire to serve her husband, her son, and her husband's family. It came to the point where women should be prepared to die and suffer in order to satisfy and prove their commitment. So that's all. So before I will end my presentation, this is the reference or resources that all of you can click and read it. So that is the end of my presentation. I hope all of you were understood my report. So again, thank you and thank you for listening.